The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own. They may not be the opinions of this network, their groups, or other organizations they may be involved in.
Meditation, ganja, my brain. Ganja, we take away my stress and strain. Ganja, my meditation, ganja in my brain. Marijuana, take away my stress and pain. Ganja, my meditation, ganja in my brain. Marijuana, take away the stress and pain. Ganja is the medication, ganja is the cure. Police of them a fight the marijuana for sure. Purify me heavens and they make me feel pure. And the way the cali we be bring it on door. Ganja in the meditation, ganja in my clothes. No offense, I'm smoking another one around you. Ganja in me daily, ganja me currency. Ganja is the currency and daily pay. Give me the revelation, it's not to get too much credit, it's been growing. So now that's what we call it.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Ganja News Update for this Monday, June the 23rd, 2025. We're at episode 127, and here on NOK Network, the video podcast focused on cannabis news being reported in mainstream media. And I'm joined by my amazing joint host. It's not Tara Simpson tonight. Tara's off tonight, folks. We got Hobby's Puppets filling in for Tara, and we have Todd, the smoking gorilla here. Todd, the smoking gorilla. So welcome, Todd. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I hold on, I gotta fix the camera. Poopot Stu's holding it up for me. And he's not really good. Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to hear you, buddy. All right. So, other than that, I'm good. There's a lot of cool ganja news going on here. Us puppets got to hang out all last week with the guy that hands out med cards for Louisiana farms, and it's a nonprofit that he goes and helps people that can't afford med cards get their med cards here in the state.
Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool to hang out with someone like that, eh?
It was. A lot of people donate weed to him, and we got to smoke a lot of blunts. We got to practice our blunt rolls. We screwed one up, and then he didn't let us roll no more.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of fun there, Todd. And yeah, it sounds exciting. So, anyways, I guess we should just get right straight into the news, shall we? Because we got
I think I saw Kim watching. We got to work.
Great. So here we go, folks. We're going to start off with our first story of the evening here, and we are live tonight, folks. We usually do a pre-recorded show, but we are live. The schedule is worked out that we're able to do a live show again. And so here we go. And this is a big news story here, right here, coming from High Times themselves on June the 17th, 2025. And it says, High Time returns. The counterculture giant reclaims its roots. And goes on to say, this was published on June the 17th by High Times. And it goes on here to say, for nearly 5 decades, High Times stood as the unapologetic voice of cannabis counterculture. More than just a magazine, it was a platform that elevated music, politics, psychedelics, activism, and the plant itself. It was a symbol of rebellion, freedom, and community. Then came the spectacular fall, the kind that made it feel like High Times might be gone for good. Until now. Today, High Times returns under new ownership, new leadership, and a renewed purpose. Raw Rolling Papers founder Josh Kesselman, a lifelong reader and supporter of the brand, has taken the lead in acquiring the core assets of High Times, including the magazine, the Cannabis Cup, and its affiliated media properties. And alongside him is Matt Stang, a former High Times executive and co-owner and longtime cultural operator who helped build the Cannabis Cup into a global institution. Their plan is to restore the soul of a brand that shaped generations and set a new course rooted in the values that first built it. And Kesselman's quoted here saying, I get to bring back a piece of history that has played such an important part in culture and impacted so many lives, including my own. This feels like a dream. And of course, the dream comes with real work and a complicated inheritance. Great. So this is exciting news.
It is. And High Time's recent history has been anything but stable. After its 2017 acquisition by an investor group led by Adam Levine, the brand shifted its focus to aggressive expansion, launching an investor crowdfund, pursuing a public offering, and acquiring retail cannabis businesses across the U.S. The pitch was seductive. Own a piece of the world's most iconic cannabis brand. Over 20,000 investors bought in, but many never got shares. Few got answers, and when High Times missed SEC filing deadlines and continued to accept investments, it triggered investigations. In 2023, the Levine was charged with security frauds. By early 2025, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy. During those years, the magazine printed intermittently. Debts mounted, and a string of failed business deals drained the company's momentum. The brand was out of cash, out of leadership, and out of time. It was heartbreaking, said a former editor who asked not to be named. We saw something we loved turn into a business plan, a bad one. In mid 2024, a court appointed receiver was actively shopping the High Times trademarks, events, and licenses to the highest bidder. Among the bidders, private equity firms, dispensary groups, and even a psychedelics company hoping to rebrand the magazine entirely. Instead, it landed in the hands of someone very at the core of cannabis culture, John Kesselman. Didn't enter the cannabis space through Silicon Valley or Wall Street. His path started in Gainesville, Florida, with a heady shop, a van, a deep love for rolling papers. What began as a storefront called Knuckleheads became the launch pad for a decades-long mission to make better papers and treat smokers with respect. Raw rolling papers officially launched in 2005 and quickly gained a loyal following among people who cared about purity, craft, and culture. The product was different, unbleached, vegan, and made with natural connection to what smokers truly wanted but never had experienced. But what set Raw apart was the man behind it, Kesselman. Connected directly with the community through videos, meetups, giveaways, and support for causes that mattered. He just didn't build a brand, he earned a following. Wow. I agree, man. I enjoy John Kesselman. I'd love to work for him someday or work with.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That would definitely be cool. He looks like a cool dude. Anyways, Kesselman's approach made him one of the most respected figures in the space, a founder with mass reach and underground credibility. And as Raw expanded worldwide, his loyalty to the roots of cannabis culture never wavered. He didn't exit, he reinvested in products, in people, in the culture itself. Josh is a character, charismatic, outspoken, and unapologetic. A throwback to the wild inventors and idealists who once ran underground empires, people like Thomas Forcade, the outlaw founder of High Times, who launched the magazine in 1974 while smuggling cannabis and funding radical newspapers. There's a poetic symmetry to it. Two long-haired misfits, decades apart, both driven by obsession and a refusal to sell out. Kesselman had watched from the outside as the magazine he grew up on lost its way. The voice was gone. The magazine, when it was published at all, felt like a big paid ad. Cannabis Cups had stopped. So when the opportunity arose to acquire the assets after the brand fell into receivership, the opportunity to rebuild it felt personal. It wasn't about flipping something, he said. It was about saving something. High Times always stood for more than the plant, Kesselman told us. It stood for truth, for freedom, for not apologizing about who we are. To help save High Times, he brought back part of the legacy to help. Matt Stang is no stranger to the High Times story. Starting as an intern in the late 1990s. He spent nearly 2 decades inside the brand, eventually rising to chief revenue officer and helping expand the magazine's reach during the early days of legalization. But his biggest contribution was the Cannabis Cup. When he first joined, the event was still a small gathering in Amsterdam. Under Stang, it evolved into a multi-city international celebration of cannabis culture. It was never just about the trophies, Stang told us. It was about recognition, community, and celebration. Very cool.
It is. It is. In 2017, the company was purchased by private equity owners. Matt vehemently disagreed with the way High Times was being turned into a private equity run business and departed soon after. During his time, he watched from the sidelines as the Cup, the magazine, lost their footing. When we saw what was happening, it wasn't just disappointing, he said, it was painful. How many years later, Stang returns as partner to help restore High Times to its uh, cultural and historical importance, adding it's time to be back, bring back, and revive the community we built together. From the sound of it, new ownership tries to bring back what made High Times special in the first place. The print magazine will return in small collectible runs with deeper stories and a focus on quality. The archives, including covers, articles, and art, will be brought back to life too. Um, yeah, that's Bob Marley is a good one. The Cannabis Cup
Yeah.
is also being rebuilt by third-party judging, real transparency, and new ways for the public to participate. Some of the greatest times of my life at these cups, and I will bring them back. That's much fun because that's the point, Castleman said. When you remove private equity and investors, when it's just a couple of people trying to do something for the culture, the possibilities become limitless. New High Times website will roll out podcasts, video features, and long form storytelling, mixing veteran contributors with new voices who live and breathe the culture. Kesselman, who has millions of followers of his own, wants the platform to serve as a home base for the most important cannabis voices on social media, rerouting users to hidden or new accounts to keep the community connected amid shadow bans and deletions. He thinks this will help save and rebuild our fractured community because, in his words, nobody can stop the truth. That's fucking awesome.
Great. It is. It is. And yes, there will be merch, apparel, rolling papers, all done right, all done in the spirit of keeping the platform alive without selling it out. The road back won't be quick, but that's the point. I don't care if it takes 5 years, Kesselman said. I'd rather go slow and build something real. Most importantly, Kesselman added, have fun while doing it, right? And we can't help but think if Thomas Forcade could see High Times now, passed from the suits back to the true believers, he'd be lighting a joint and saying, finally. So that's a really cool story. Really cool story. I'm sure there's going to be lots of people that are going to be excited for the High Times comeback. And
Right. I'd love to be a podcaster on High Times Podcast.
Right, that would be cool. That would be cool. And what's even cooler is they're going back to the roots, to where it started with, and not the big corporate type stuff, right? So that really resonates with a lot of people, I think. So, anyways, we're gonna move on to our next story for the evening. And Todd, do you mind starting us off with this one?
Sure. This one comes from stratcan.com. StratCan says Canadian craft cannabis is in high demand on international stage in June 17th, written by David Brown. As the export market evolves, medical cannabis users in countries like Germany, Australia, Israel, and the UK are increasingly developing a taste for Canada's micro and craft growers. While a wave of Canadian cannabis exports over the last few years is causing concern with some local producers in countries like Israel and Australia, many of the people using cannabis for medical purposes in these countries are seeking out Canadian products. This is especially true for micro and craft products, especially from BC, says Toby Chiletto, a medical cannabis industry consultant in London, England. He says that initially a lot of products coming into the UK medical cannabis market were priced on the lower side of the spectrum. But in the last year or so, he's been seeing a lot more high quality products that were meeting the previously untapped demand. Wow, that's cool.
Right. Up to now, we've either had the cheaper, which sells for about £6 a gram. Is that pound? Yeah, pounds a gram, or $11 Canadian to the end user from the large glass houses. We're talking about greenhouses in Southern Ontario. And the more expensive has been coming from the micro licenses in BC, for example, explains Solito. And that sells for about £9 a gram or $17 Canadian to the end patient. This also means a shift in the market from a focus entirely on high THC flower to more balanced options with a greater emphasis on terpenes. Shadlito says some of the unique products from these micros, like small batches grown in living soil, are a hit with a certain set of patients in the UK. And of course, the set of patients in the UK is the same type of set of patients in the US, the same set of patients in Canada, who are looking for good, clean medicine, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want the pesticides. We don't want all of the other stuff. We don't want our weed to be irradiated. We want good, pure stuff. And the UK is certainly good at getting a taste of it of Canada's weed. And Canada does a lot of exporting of cannabis to other countries. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize. But anyways, I'll carry on here. I digress. One opportunity for Canadian growers, especially small batch producers, he adds, is an untapped demand for non-irradiated cannabis, while most of the products being exported are remediated in some way, not only to meet strict standards, but to ensure they can meet those standards with a longer shelf life due to the export process. It's not necessarily a requirement. There's definitely a desire from some patients here for a host of reasons to prefer that. Producers in Canada or elsewhere who can imagine that there will be patients who want to buy it. Andrew Dowling, a director at Phytoca, on an Australian cannabis company that sources products for the Australian medical cannabis market from countries like Canada, says he also sees an increasing awareness among some Australian medical patients who are interested in Canadian craft cannabis products. Still, he notes that this represents a small portion of the overall market in Australia, which remains focused on low-cost products. This, he explains, is because the doctors who act as gatekeepers in the market tend to focus on the lowest cost products unless patients are specifically asking for a particular brand. There's a quote here: "The best craft that we've been able to find is from Canada," says Dowling, noting that they have sourced product from growers in provinces like BC and Saskatchewan. The Canadian craft stuff is part of our market, but it's not necessarily a big part of the market. The Australian market is largely bulk smalls rather than premium flower. That will always have a place in our market, but it's not moving the needle for most companies here. Cool.
Joseph Spiffen, Spit Terry, sorry, my hit kind of rattled my head a second. The director of marketing at Purple Farm, a cannabis producer in Fredericton, New Brunswick, which sells the international market, says he's the first this trend firsthand. Oh, says he's seeing this trend firsthand. That makes more sense. Canadian cannabis exports climbed to 218 million year, a 36% increase, says Spiteri. Craft producers like Purple Farm are benefiting directly. So we're seeing international partners shift from asking about volume to asking about story. How is it growing? Who's behind it? And whether it delivers a consistent high terpene experience. This shift doesn't surprise us. It's exactly why we stayed small batch, European GMP focused and obsessive about plant morphology. The market is finally rewarded integrity. And there is a demand in the market for not just the type of product, but for the stories behind these similar companies or smaller companies. International buyers are no longer buying cannabis yet. They're buying brands, genetics, and cultivation philosophy. At Purple Farm, we built our company around that. We lead with transparency. We curate genetics with purpose, and we translate the craft grower's mindset into consumer language. Today, consumers don't just want potency, they want precision, sustainability, and emotional resonance. That's why we prioritize education and storytelling that reflect the same care we bring it to the grow room. Not everyone has a such rosy outlook, though. Deepak and Nod, and an industry consultant whose work includes connecting buyers and sellers in the international cannabis market, says he is stating to see increased competition and price comparison that is driving the market back towards lower price, high volume products. Yes, there is a that emerging demand, but it's now shifted back to value products. Explains that's where the real demand is now, and there's a lot of price compression coming to the market. He notes that this doesn't mean the current demand is going away, but is more a cautionary note for a new, smaller cannabis producers in Canada who might be tempted to put all their eggs in the export basket. I think the existing establishing brands will be fine, it says in ad. It's the new companies just coming in who are looking at the international market as where they need to put all their energy. I think there's some cause for concern there. Gord Nickel, the owner of Saskatchewan-based microproducer North 40, says about 95% of what he grows is currently going to the international market in places like Australia and Germany. Nickel says he hasn't had companies in those countries active seeking out his product, rather needing to go looking for a buyer. They want our superior products in their markets, said Nickel, where most of what I grow goes now. What they really looking is consistency, high end consistency, and that he isn't saddled with high excise tax if he is not selling in Canada. Without excise tax relief, I suspect this trend is going to continue. What it means there's less top quality weed in Canada. Well, then consumers are going to go elsewhere looking for it, featured in Midge via Miracle Valley.
Yeah, so yeah, the excise taxes here are huge. So from a cannabis producer standpoint, it kind of makes sense to make a shift into the export market because you can avoid all that, right? And there's
Yeah, so your
product.
your excise tax is your your tax, your cannabis
No,
tax.
that's the excise tax is done right, like it's charged like this is before okay. The producers, I believe, is the ones who have to pay this. They pay it to the federal government. It's a tax, like a duty tax, just like you pay on alcohol and all that type of stuff, and cigarettes and stuff. It's got like an excise stamp sticker on it, so you know that it's been run through the tax system, federal tax system, right? And I don't know how to explain it all exactly the way it is, but all I know that like this is not your sales tax that's added on at the time of purchase, or state tax, or well, not state, but provincial tax or anything like that. This is strictly a federal tax that's applied at the producer level, and the producers must pay that to the government. Now, the thing is, a lot of the producers are way behind in their excise tax payments. And yeah, because they just can't afford it. They can't afford it because in many cases, so the excise tax, I think it's $1 per gram or 10% of the price. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's a big bottleneck in our industry. That again, it creates a demand for producers to take their business to the international stage, just as like we described here, especially when it comes to the craft cannabis side, right? Because that's all grown in living soil, it's small batch, and that's what a demand is for it. So anyways, I hope I explained it correctly there. If I didn't, you guys, the viewers, you can always look it up online. But we're going to move over to our last story before the break here. We got another just a short one here. And this one here is coming to us from Business of Cannabis. Aurora Cannabis faces class action over lack of warnings about cannabinoid hypermesis syndrome. And this is by Sarah Sinclair, published on June 17th, 2025. And here we go. It was first published on Canada Health, or Cannabis Health, rather. A national class action has been brought against Aurora Cannabis in Canada, alleging that the company negligently failed to warn consumers about the risk of developing cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, or CHS. On May 14th, 2025, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice certified a national class action alleging that Aurora Cannabis Inc. and Aurora Cannabis Enterprises Inc. negligently failed to warn consumers of the risk of developing CHS posed by the regular use of its products. The claim is being brought by Sotos Class Actions on behalf of all customers who purchased Aurora Cannabis product between February 2015 and May 2025. Hey, I probably qualify for this because I purchased cannabis from Aurora from 2017, June 2017 to about June, July, August of 2018. I should take a look at this. Now, I don't have cannabis hypermesis syndrome, but I did have a wheezing cough and stuff that went away when I stopped using their products. So I don't know. Anyways, I digress. It alleges that the company knew or should have known of the risk of CHS arising from the regular use of their cannabis products, but failed to provide any warning to consumers or prescribing physicians. CHS is usually associated with regular high-dose cannabis use, characterized by cyclical bouts of severe nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain, which can persist for several days and occur as often as once every 5 minutes. In extreme cases, CHS has been linked to fatalities. I've never heard of that. I'm not saying it hasn't, but I'd like to see where they're pulling that information from. There's no clicky link there to find out. But anyways, Todd, can you carry on for us from here?
Yeah. Where were we?
According to researchers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So now I'm like flipped out. Now I want to, like, every time I puff weed on here, I wanted to say CHS is usually associated with regularly high dose cannabis use. This puppet does not condone you to smoke as much as a puppet. Well, I mean, god damn them. Anyways, according to researchers, the exact prevalence of CHS is unclear, ranging from 350,000 in the USA to an extrapolated estimate of 2.75 million based on data from an emergency department survey in New York City. In 2021, the U.S. Surgeon General released a statement warning the potential of CHS in chronic cannabis users. According to Margaret Waddle, a partner at Soto Class Actions, thousands of Canadian cannabis users are hospitalized and diagnosed with CHS every year. We know from a study that published in 2022 that over 8,000 individuals has been hospitalized, approximately 19,000 between 2014 to 2021. Just in Ontario, she told Cannabis Health. As cannabis was legalized during the study period in 2018, and use has gone up since widespread commercialization, the authors of the study estimate a significant increase in CHS, which has been borne out based upon information we have received from doctors. We estimate the total number of people who have suffered from CHS during the class period to be approximately 300 or 35,000 individuals. And based on Aurora's market share, we estimate that there are in the range of 5,250 individuals who would qualify as class members in the claim against Aurora. Um, the action was commenced by a Canadian Armed Forces veteran known as VT who prescribed cannabis to treat medical conditions. As for purchasing medical cannabis from Aurora and using it as prescribed, she said to have experienced extreme bouts of nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain from which she was hospitalized. On a second visit to the emergency room, she was diagnosed with CHS. VT stopped consuming cannabis, only known treatment for CHS, and is now understood to be symptom free. VT commenced this action to help draw awareness to the fact that consuming cannabis products can cause CHS. She does not want other people to suffer the way she did when CHS manifested itself, said Waddle. She would like to see Aurora and other Canadian cannabis producers, including a warning about the risks of CHS, so that consumers are properly informed about the risk. And so that if they suffer from CHS, they will be better able to identify what has happened and know how to treat the symptoms. According to claimants, none of the cannabis products that were consumed contain any warning about CHS, nor is there any warning in the product monograph or on Aurora's website. CHS has been identified in scientific journals since 2004. In our opinion, the manufacturer should have known about the side effects of regular use once it was identified, and certainly by the state of the class period in this case, the CHS was well recognized in the scientific community. Model continued. Our opinion is that the manufacturers and distributors should have been warning consumers about CHS just as they warn about other adverse effects, so that consumers can make informed decisions about use, continuing use, and how to respond if they develop CHS. Whew, I
Yeah.
need a drink.
This is thought to be the first case of its kind, but according to Waddell, it could have knock-on effects for the wider cannabis industry, including the requirement for manufacturers to provide more robust warnings. We certainly hope that the publicity from this case will lead to legislative changes requiring the risk of developing CHS to be included in the product monograph. The U.S. Surgeon General released a warning about the risk of CHS in 2021, and we would like to see more robust warnings for Canadian consumers too, she added. It is possible that more class actions will be commenced against other cannabis manufacturers. We are certainly interested in speaking to anyone else who would be interested in starting a class action against any of the other Canadian manufacturers to discuss what is involved. Aurora Cannabis denies all of the claims made against it. And of course, that's understandable that that's what their position is going to be. That's what their legal teams probably told them to say. A spokesperson for the company said it is the company's practice not to comment on legal matters beyond information that is made available to the public, and information pertaining to the mentioned class action can be obtained through our standard disclosures. So I know CHS is it's controversial. I personally don't know what to think of it myself, except for the fact that I know someone who has experienced these symptoms and has been diagnosed with this, whether it's cannabis hyperemesis syndrome or like CHS or something else. I don't know. But you know what? They might have a point here in the warnings. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I understand the CYA because I mean, as we do smoke cannabis, and people could say we encourage them to continue the use of the medication, which could put us in jeopardy. But at the same time, I mean, everybody's at their own free will. You know, it's like I'm
Exactly.
about as informative as you are, and I know a case. Mr. Hobby's missus went to the hospital, and we were in there, and she has gastritis, and we had a fuck of a weekend. We were getting treated all over New Orleans for like 4 days. Of course, her body was rejecting half of the stuff, and she couldn't poop. We sat there at the ER. They treated us terrible, made us like detox, like so they could get results. Yeah, and came back and said that it was CHS. Well, she went, Mrs. Hobbies went back to her regular doctor and says, "Fuck, you know, this is what's going on." And even the doctor said, "Oh, no, they should have ran this test, did this. It's because of this. Here, take this medication." She's had no problem. She hasn't changed her cannabis usage, you know, like maybe a little more than one less. And she still is not having the symptoms that she was having when it was a different medical problem. I'm starting to think that once people see cannabis as one of your medications that you're taking, they're stopping and looking at other shit. So you don't know what the fuck's going on.
100%. And you know what? I know time's getting on here, but I experienced that not with cannabis, but with opiates. I was on opiates. I went into the ER because I fell off a ladder. The doctor, as soon as he read my chart that I was on opiates, he thought I was drug seeking because I was writhing in bed. He thought I was tweaking out. He didn't even check me. I didn't think to bring my half bottle of pills I still had at home to prove I'm not drug seeking.
Right.
And so that happens with just pharmaceuticals too. Once a doctor gets in their head that they're looking for one thing, they have blinders on and don't see things for what they really are. And I personally think that needs to change. But
they're trained for how many years? Yeah, they're trained for how many years that drugs and other substances are the issues.
Exactly. So, anyways, we've gone on long enough here for the first segment of the show. It's medication time. I almost said meditation time. Maybe it's meditation time too later. So
right. Now it's meditation time. Right. Well, you can meditate and pay some bills and stay tuned for a word from some of our sponsors. And then we will return with some articles making mainstream media news.
That's right. We'll be back in just a few minutes. In fact, 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Ganja News Update on NOK Network. So don't go away.
Hey, hi, my name is John Mark, aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyndinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set. One dab, only really need one dab. One dab.
Smoke Signal is a medical dispensary where you can get all your products and needs.
Vaping a whole bunch. Might just start laying off the blunts. God. Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram. Go and hold it in, feel it in your ribs.
So come and check us out in Tyndinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyndinaga. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Are you a Northern Ontario resident searching for credible information on cannabis as a medicine? No Sir is here to help. Established in 2013, Northern Ontario Cannabis Education and Resources is here for you. No Sir Director Kim Cooper brings you 45 plus years experience utilizing cannabis as a medicine, and she is spreading that education across the North. Activism, referrals, resources, and more at No Sir. Don't be a jackass. Say no, sir, to propaganda with No Sir. Find them at www.nocer.ca.
Advertising space available at NOK. Contact us for a rate sheet at knocknetwork.com.
Dudes and dudettes, enjoy the show, man.
Hey,
we're back for medication time live on Ganja News here on Knox Network. Yeah.
That's right, folks. We got another set of stories coming at you, making cannabis news. So let's get at it. And we got Tommy in the house tonight now for this segment of the show. So here we go. Tommy, do you mind? Whoa, I forgot to. There we go. We're waiting here. We're waiting for this to change. There we go. Tommy, do you mind starting us off on this story, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hold on. I want to take another hit.
Cool. We got time for that. Great.
Oh, shit. That was a bad hit. Anyways, mmpp.org. It is a press release. Texas became the 40th state to legalize medical cannabis. June 21st, immediate release from Violet Cavendish is the contactee. Awesome, Texas. It's on Saturday. Governor Greg Abbott signed a medical cannabis expansion bill for HB 46 into lawmaking, making Texas the 40th state to legalize cannabis for medical use. The final version of HB 46 includes several improvements to the Texas Compassionate Use Program, which is the TCUP. Previously, TCUP was an extremely limited, kicking your nuts, restrictive low THC medical cannabis program that didn't meet the marijuana policy project standard to be considered a medical cannabis state. For too long, the existing Texas Compassionate Use Program has been severely limited, leaving countless Texans without the relief they desperately need. Texans have spoken and their voices have been heard. HB 46 will expand access to medical cannabis, a relatively safe and effective treatment option that has long been sought by patients suffering from pain and several serious medical conditions. Kevin Caldwell, Southeast Legislative Manager at the Marijuana Policy Project. Wow.
Right, that's cool. That's cool. The improvements to TCUP include adding chronic pain, Crohn's disease, and traumatic brain injury as qualifying conditions, and adding methods of delivery to include lotions, patches, suppositories, pulmonary inhalation with approved nebulizers, inhalers, and vaporizers when directed by a doctor. Further, the bill replaces the current limit of 1% THC by weight with up to 10 milligrams per dose and a package not to exceed 1 gram of THC. The bill also requires the Department of Public Safety to issue 12 more licenses for dispensing organizations for a total of 15 total. Dispensing organizations must become operational within 24 months after the license is issued. A full summary of HB 46 is available here, and there is a click link right there. With the addition of Texas, 40 states and Washington, D.C. now have workable medical cannabis laws. Polling consistently shows that the vast majority of Americans support allowing seriously ill patients to use cannabis for medical purposes with their doctor's approval. Following in the footsteps of 39 other states, Texas has embraced a common sense policy that will ensure that Texans facing serious medical conditions have access to a medicine that's already successfully improving lives nationwide. This new law is a direct result of overwhelming public support acknowledging medical cannabis as a valuable, scientifically supported option for managing chronic pain and debilitating illnesses. And that was according to Lauren Daly, Interim Executive Director at the Marijuana Policy Project. And just goes on here to say just a little word about Marijuana Policy Project, founded in 1995. The Marijuana Policy Project, MPP, is the nation's leading cannabis policy reform organization. MPP has played a central role in passing dozens of cannabis policy reforms in states across the country, including 14 successful cannabis legalization campaigns, and also works to advance federal reforms. And more information about them can be found on their website at www.mpp.org. So very cool, very cool. But I think it's still a long ways away from where it needs to be, but baby steps, right?
Well, I mean, that's what the fuck did they do? 1%? What the fuck?
I know. I know. I wasn't going to go there. But you did. Yeah, I know. What the fuck? Like, is that really helpful to patients? Nope.
No, I mean, I don't know, man. I guess every politician has their own, like, I guess, derivative. Um, I don't think they clearly heard what their contingents and contingents um, were saying. I don't think they said give us fucking only 1%,
Yeah.
because look at cancer patients, ill treatments, all this other stuff, and the very few that they only have on there. It's not. I mean, come on, do better, Texas.
Yeah, exactly. And oh, how nice of them to now include a few other illnesses and stuff, right? Why not
Right.
open? Why not have it available to anyone who a doctor would prescribe a pill to? Why do those people not have the option to use cannabis instead or in conjunction with? Why?
Right. I don't know. I don't know.
I want someone. I would love someone to answer that for me. I know you can't.
Right.
I can't. But why? It doesn't make sense.
Right. They just raided a bunch of like people over their THC and did a stance on hemp and everything there. Like there's no THC products, and all they did was just raise it to 1%. I don't know.
Right. Right. Anyways,
A
we're
lot of
moving on.
reform needs to be done.
Right. We're moving over to our next story, and this one here is coming to us from the Missouri Independent, and it was published on June 20th, 2025, by Rebecca Rivas or Rive or whatever. I'm not sure. Rivas.
I don't know how to say it, but every time I giggle inside.
Rivas. I don't know. Anyways, cannabis advocates question Missouri policy on medical marijuana patients' buying rights. If marijuana patients reach their limit, state regulators say they're not legally allowed to buy cannabis like a recreational consumer. And the story goes on here to say cannabis advocacy organizations are sounding the alarm about guidance from state regulators limiting how much medical marijuana patients buy so they don't exceed. Hold on. No, I kind of skipped over something. Cannabis advocacy organizations are sounding an alarm about guidance from state regulators limiting how much medical marijuana patients can purchase from licensed dispensaries. By law, dispensaries are required to track how much medical marijuana patients buy so they don't exceed their limit. According to FAQ that was added earlier this year to the website of the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, the state's cannabis regulatory agency, if patients reach their limit, they are not legally allowed to buy marijuana like as a recreational consumer. There's a quote here saying patient ID card holders are not allowed to purchase as a consumer in a licensed dispensary. The website states these regulations help ensure patients and consumers stay within their allowed possession limits. In general, medical patients are limited to a 6-ounce allotment of dried, unprocessed marijuana every 30 days. Recreational consumers are allowed to purchase up to 3 ounces every day, but can't possess more than 3 ounces. The state is prohibited by law from tracking the purchases of people who don't have patient ID cards without their permission. And Andrew Mullins, executive director of the Missouri Marijuana Trade Association, sent a letter to leaders of the Division of Cannabis Regulation in April, claiming the policy is unconstitutional. And he goes on here to write, we believe that DCR's interpretation that a Missourian must either be an adult use consumer or a medical patient is neither good public policy nor a constitutionally sound interpretation. I kind of tend to agree with him on that. So,
yeah, Mullins said the policy is also inconsistent with what the division told the industry members in February 2023, just days after recreational marijuana sales began in Missouri. The division sent an email responding to an industry member's question on the issue that said patients who are 21 years of age or older will also be able to purchase cannabis products as a consumer. Lisa Cox, a spokeswoman for the division, said the February email was inaccurate and set in error. It was a few months before the final administrative rules on recreational cannabis became effective in August 2023, she said. The department has received and reviewed the correspondence from the McCann trade regarding the communication that was sent in error, Cox said. The department has engaged directly with McCann trade to address their concerns and has informed them that the policies are currently under review. Brendan England, Missouri State Director for Minorities for Medical Marijuana, believes there's needs to be coordinated efforts to repeal the policy. We, in the Black and brown medical community, were early adopters seeking primary legal protection, consistent access, and affordability. He said restricting patient purchasing power is not a neutral act. It disrupts care and deepens mistrust to the likes of who moved first with the most at the stake. England, a longtime medical cannabis patient and community leader, began organizing for the medical marijuana reform in 2014, leading some of the state's largest signature drives and public education events. He founded the St. Louis Cannabis Club and opened the Cola Lounge, Missouri's first private cannabis consumption space, in 2019. The moment state protections for patients became active. England believes the rule harms minority communities disproportionately, and a repeal should be followed by a joint policy briefing. I like joints with division leaders and impacted patients, license operators, and legal advisors. Beyond policy, we need strategy that humanizes the process, England said. That means real conversations, not just statements, where regulators hear firsthand from patients and communities affected. A briefing is one thing, but sitting across from someone who's pissed, who cared delayed or denied by this rule, that creates impact data alone can't.
Right. Right.
Oh, they didn't write pissed. Yeah, I added pissed. They didn't write pissed.
Yeah, having people that are affected by it right in front of them. Like, come on, how are they going to answer to them with all this, right? Like, yeah, change needs to happen. Change needs to happen.
It's right. I mean, I understand we have a billion voters or whatever in the state. Everybody's going to have a different idea on how they should have their treatment of medical and safety of medical. And everybody's going to have a different view. And I mean, not everybody is going to be pleased.
Exactly. So, yeah, no, I hear you on that. I hear you. So, anyways, we've got one last story before the end of the show here. I think we can cover it. I know we're just about at the 9 o'clock mark here, but I don't know. Do you want to do it? We can do it.
I can do it.
We'll do it. We'll do it. Okay. So this here's another interesting story coming from healthline.com. Cannabis use may double the risk of death from cardiovascular disease, study finds. Written by David Mills on June 18th, 2025, and fact-checked by Jill Salati-Schulman, PhD. Okay, they're fact-checking their articles. So let's see what this has to say. New scientific analysis indicates a couple points here. New scientific analysis indicates that cannabis use may increase the risk of cardiovascular health issues, including stroke. In an accompanying editorial, two health experts say these risks are serious enough to warrant the regulation of cannabis in the same manner as tobacco. Previous research has reported on the health benefits of cannabis for people with chronic pain and other ailments, but experts say the potential effects of cannabis should be discussed with your doctor. Medical experts are sending out another strong warning about cannabis use and the risk of cardiovascular health issues. In an analysis published in the journal Heart, researchers report heightened risks of stroke, acute coronary syndrome, and death from cardiovascular disease associated with frequent cannabis use. In an accompanying editorial, two health experts say the dangers from cannabis use are serious enough to warrant the substance being regulated, much like tobacco. The editorial authors say the warnings are particularly important because the recent widespread legalization of the drug may have convinced many people that cannabis use is safe. There's a quote here. Frequent cannabis use has increased in several countries, and many users believe it is safe and natural. It is a safe and natural way to relieve pain and stress, or stress. In contrast, a growing body of evidence links cannabis use to significant harms throughout life, including cardiovascular health of adults, wrote Stanton Glantz, PhD and emeritus professor at the University of California, San Francisco, and Lynn Silver, MD, a professor in UCSF's Department of Epidemiology and a program director at the Public Health Institute in Oakland, California. And specifically, cannabis should be treated like tobacco, not criminalized, but discouraged, with the protection of bystanders from secondhand exposure, the editorial's authors added. So that's what they're saying so far.
Where are we?
Robert Page 2.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. There we are. All right. Robert Page 2, PharmD, a professor in the Department of Clinical Pharmacy of the Department of Physical Medicine, Rehabilitation at the University of Colorado's Skaggs School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. Holy fuck, that's a lot to say. Noted the analysis relied on observational studies, but said the message is clear. This meta-analysis validates current large observation studies that the cannabis should be considered a potential risk factor for premature development of ASCVD, cardiovascular disease, said Page, who was chair of an American Heart Association writing group that authored a 2020 report on cannabis, medical cannabis, and heart health. Page wasn't involved in the present study. If we ignore these signals, we are destined to repeat the fatal history of cigarette smoking, which took years to finally realize its devastating effects on cardiovascular health and mortality, he told Live. Cannabis and heart health. In their analysis, researchers looked at 24 studies published between January 16 and 2023 that included about 200 million people. The study participants were mostly between the ages 19 and 59. Cannabis users tended to be more frequent in males and younger people. The researchers said their analysis of the data revealed that cannabis use doubled the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. They reported that the people who cannabis had 29% higher risk of acute coronary syndrome, a condition that causes sudden reduced or black flow to the heart, as well as 20% higher risk of stroke. The researchers acknowledged that many of the studies they analyzed lacked information on missing data and precise measures of cannabis exposure. Most of the studies were also observational. Nonetheless, their analysis comes less than a month after another study concluded that chronic use of cannabis is associated with higher risk of endothelial dysfunction, a type of non-obstructive coronary artery disease. in which there is no heart artery blocks, but the large blood vessels on the heart surface constricted instead of dilating. In addition, another analysis said from earlier this year reported that cannabis users were 6 times more likely to have a heart attack than users. A 2024, or non-users, that didn't make no damn sense. A 2024 study concluded that people who used cannabis to treat chronic pain had a higher risk of atrial fibrillation and other forms of heart arrhythmia. The researchers in new analysis says their findings are particularly important because the use of cannabis has soared in recent years. They also note that the potency of the drug has increased. Wow, it has. Amen to that.
Right, right. There was no delineation in the analysis, however, on the risk of smoking cannabis compared to ingesting it. Cheng Han Chen, MD, an interventional cardiologist and medical director at the Structural Heart Program at Memorial Care Saddleback Medical Center in California, said both methods may present health risks. Chen wasn't involved in the study. See, I have a problem with people as qualified as they are as an MD or whatever, giving their opinions on a study that they had no involvement in. Really?
Everybody's got an opinion, though.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is why, again, I say the studies always take them with a grain of salt, because you can also have your study tell you whatever you want it to tell you, depending on what information you extrapolate and what you don't. So, anyways, it is thought that ingesting THC increases systolic absorption of the chemical when compared to smoking THC, and thus results in greater adverse effects, he told Healthline. However, cannabis smoke comes with a separate set of health concerns, as the smoke contains many carcinogens and mutagens similar to tobacco smoke. Ziva Cooper, the director of the UCLA Center for Cannabis and Cannabinoids, said the frequency someone uses cannabis as well as the dosage are also important factors. Cooper was likewise not involved in the study. She noted that the new research is starting to show that there are mental health risks to frequent cannabis use. One of those is cannabis use disorder, a condition that is estimated to affect 30% of people who use the substance. There are new risks that are emerging that weren't even on the radar, Cooper told Healthline. She added, cannabis can also impair people's ability to drive as well as impair their cognitive abilities. These are things that can affect a person's everyday life, Cooper says. Defending cannabis use, Paul Armentano, the deputy director of NORML, a nonprofit that advocates for the responsible use of cannabis, acknowledges there are studies that report health risks associated with cannabis use. Armentano wasn't involved in the study. However, he told Healthline that there are others who conclude there is no risk or even a decreased risk of cardiovascular disease from cannabis use. These include a 2023 study, a 2020 study, and a 2023 meta-analysis. And there's clicky links on those as well. He goes on here to say, in short, while tobacco smoke's exposure in cardiovascular disease is well established, the potential role of cannabis smoke is not. Nonetheless, persons wishing to mitigate their intake of cannabis smoke can do so via the use of herbal vaporizers, which heat cannabinoids to the point of activation, but below the point of combustion. Armentano cited studies in 2006 and 2007 that reported no health effects from vaporization. And some research has reported on some overall health benefits derived from cannabis use. And a 2023 study concluded that medical cannabis can improve the quality of life for some people with chronic pain, and other research has reported that cannabis can be helpful to people with depression, social anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. There are also indications that cannabis products can help ease the side effects of cancer treatment. Now, I don't think we're going to finish the whole rest of the story because, oh no, we are. We're just one last little bit left. Okay, we'll finish it off then. Talking to your doctor about cannabis. In their editorial, Glantz and Silver encourage medical professionals to become leaders in cannabis education. There is an important role for public health and public policy in addressing the risks identified in the new analysis, they wrote. While the trend toward legalization is established, that does not mean the risks of cannabis should be minimized or its use encouraged. Page says he takes cannabis use into consideration when assessing his patients' cardiovascular health. While many of the current cardiovascular risk calculators do not include smoking cannabis into their algorithms, I do include it just like smoking cigarettes when assessing patients' assessing patients' cardiovascular risk, and consider it consider it just as powerful a risk factor as smoking cigarettes, he said. Page added that people should be informed about many potential health issues of cannabis use before deciding whether to use it, and know the risks and talk to your primary care provider before considering any use, medical or recreational. Many younger adults feel invincible and have belief that this will not happen to me or I could never develop cannabis use disorder. However, it does and can occur, he says. For older adults, I caution them regarding potential drug-drug interactions, as both THC and CBD can have effects on a large majority of medications, which is true. We've reported here in the past on Ganja News Update how it can, in many people, increase the efficacy of opiates and other pain medications, which, in a sense, if someone is not titrating down on the pain medications, and if they're using cannabis, especially if they're increasing their use of cannabis, there can be essentially almost an overdose of the opiate because it's working way too much in the bloodstream. But anyways, I digress. Where was I here? Can have effects on a large majority of medications, both pharmacokinetically and pharmacodynamically, Page added. Chen agrees that patients need to educate themselves about cannabis before trying it, and any form of cannabis use does involve some risk to your health. Everyone must decide for themselves how much risk they want to expose themselves to, said Chen. I would advise people to avoid smoking cannabis as the smoke can directly harm the lungs. Also, patients with known pre-existing cardiovascular disease or with cardiovascular risk factors should consider avoiding cannabis use in general, given the potential harm to heart health, he added. Cooper noted that cannabis has 500 different chemical components, so its effects can vary greatly from person to person. People should understand what kind of product they are using, she said. And I don't necessarily agree with everything in the article, but I do agree with certain things in there. You should know what's in, like you should know what terpenes are all in your cannabis, because I think a lot of reactions that people have to cannabis that are bad reactions may just be a bad reaction to the terpenes. Like I'd be interested in finding out what if these people have any food reactions and what food reactions they are, and cross-reference from those foods to the cannabis they're using. Just saying, right? But anyway, yeah, right. So great show tonight. Great show. That concludes the end of our show here. And so I just want to thank you all for joining us this week again here on Ganja News Update on NOK Network, and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network's Rumble and YouTube pages, as well as our social media sites.
Oh shit, that's me. We hope you enjoyed your updates on mainstream media coverage and cannabis news and information around the globe.
That's right. And many thanks to our sponsors for making this show possible. And thank you to my joint host, not Tara Simpson over here. We got Hobby's Puppets. Earlier we had Todd the gorilla. Right now we got Tommy the dog here right now. And to you, our listeners, for joining us each week on Medication Mondays with Ganja News Update on NOK Network. Cheers, everyone, and good night. We'll see you again next week. Take care.
Woo-hoo-hoo!
Ganja my meditation, ganja my brain. Ganja we take away my stress and strain. Ganja my meditation, ganja in my brain. Marijuana take away my stress and pain. Ganja my meditation, ganja in my brain. Marijuana take away the stress and pain. Ganja is the medication, ganja is the cure. Police of them a fight the marijuana for sure. Purify me heavens and they make me feel pure. 100 way to Cali, we be bring it on tour. Ganja in the meditation, ganja in my clothes. No offense, I'm smoking another one around you. Ganja in the daily, ganja me currency. Ganja is the currency and daily pay. Give me the revelation, it's not to get too much credit and growing. So that's what we call it.